Okay, my name is Wilkinson. I'm with the Department of Teaching and Learning, and it's great coming last and trying to think of something new to say, as I've been sitting here wondering what you haven't heard. So I'll keep this very brief. I don't have much to add beyond what people have already said. I do research in reading, and in particular I do research on classroom discussions in elementary school, and classroom discussions about text to promote high-level thinking and comprehension. And I've had a couple of grants from the Institute of Education Sciences, and last night, in the preparation for this, I looked through the RFA that I applied to, and there was no mention of a logic model, but they all mention that we want to see a theory of change. A theory of change, which is another code word for a logic model. And I've always struggled with logic models because, as you've picked up already, they come out of program evaluation, program management. And I'm not into program management. I'm not particularly interested in program evaluation. So I've always struggled with this. And you'll see that in a couple of examples I'm going to show you. So the logic models I've used in my proposals embody the theory of change. And because of that, the models I use are theoretically informed. And I've only heard the word theory once. So today, I came from New Jersey, used the word theoretical. So I like to make my models informed by theory as well as the pragmatics of the inputs and outputs. So I'm going to show you a couple of models, very simple ones. The first is a model on a grant where we were concerned with promoting high-level reading comprehension with a particular intervention I was developing called Quality Talk. So this was a reading and writing grant. It was a goal to development and innovation grant. Our goal was to develop the intervention from scratch, basically. Another thing I want to mention is because what I do is informed by theory, the theory I use tells me that context is important. The context in which the intervention occurs is important. And so as soon as you realize that context is important in culture, how do you put that on a graph? Where would it go? How would you put that in a figure? Where would you put the context? It's sort of like it's everywhere. So you'll see me struggling with that. So here's one logic model we developed, my colleagues and I, for this quality talk intervention. And, okay, so you can see that in this particular quality talk model, there were 4 main components. Let me come to the output. The outcome I was interested in was high-level comprehension of text. So my intervention was built around promoting high-level comprehension of text. And the components were an instructional framework for what this should look like in the classroom. When should reading occur? How should groups be constructed? Things like that. Given this instructional frame or context, there were certain talk tools and signs, discourse tools and signs that we were interested in looking at. I knew that the teacher had to model and scaffold those discourse tools and signs. So rather than put this in a linear fashion, I put teacher modeling and scaffolding as a mediating factor between context, frame, and outcome to promote these discourse tools and signs. So that's 1, 2, 3. But here's I knew that all of this intervention had to take place within a culture of dialogic inquiry. So I sort of put that as a pervasive bar under which everything else is captured. Because that culture of dialogic inquiry was important, not just to bootstrap the whole intervention, but to work in context with my instructional framework for everything else to work. So this was our attempt at reflecting how to embed an intervention within a particular context, within a particular culture and dialogue integrated. So I actually like that quality talk model, and it seemed to serve the purpose for our proposal. It seemed to work pretty well. Not particularly complicated, but the inputs and the outputs were easily represented, as well as these more amorphous things like culture and teacher modeling and scaffolding. The project I'm working on right now is a little bit different. It's a professional development project where we're developing a program of professional development in something that we call dialogic teaching. And our goal is to help teachers conduct classroom discussions about text to improve students' so-called argument literacy. So this was quite new to me. I never worked in professional development before. It was interesting. And this was in the Effective Teachers and Effective Teaching program within the Institute of Education Sciences. Again, it's a Goal 2 project. And we have a very simple logic model, much like the ones we've seen earlier today. So this is our logic model of teaching professional development and dialogic teaching through discussion. We have a set of inputs, and we characterize these as 5 modules for teachers in our professional development program, 5 different components to professional development: discourse coaching, assessment, enacting discussions, analysing discourse, dialogic teaching. We have a set of outcomes premised on the common core state standards. Our outcome is argument literacy, generating arguments with reasons and evidence, comprehending arguments. So those are our outcomes. Here's our inputs over here. Given as professional development, that provides a conceptual support for teachers to engage in dialogic teaching, and we enumerated the features of dialogic teaching. They in turn helped inform teachers how they conduct discussions about text with their students, and then we had a theory by which the discussions about text would enhance students' individual literacy outcomes, argument literacy. Now again, context played a role here. We weren't quite sure how to represent it, but we knew that this whole process, for it to work, we had a theory about teachers' epistemology, teachers' view of the nature of knowledge. We thought that if teachers are to be successful in engaging in this professional development program and really taking hold of it, they would have to take up what we call an evaluatist epistemology, a view of knowledge that suggests that we can reason reasonably and reflectively about certain issues using talk. So supporting this whole process is a progressive shift from an absolutist or modalist epistemology to this evaluatist epistemology. And we have measures in our project to assess shifts in epistemology over time, to see if our PD is supporting that shift, and to see if the shift is maybe supporting the take-up of the PD. So that was a challenge for us to represent that, and you can see how we tried to represent it as a sort of pervasive context which everything else works, somewhat similar to what I showed you previously. Interestingly enough, when we submitted this proposal, which was funded, we got back a set of queries. And one of the queries was, one of the questions was, please tell us more about your theory by which argument literacy is fostered by discussion. And there was a little bit of a black box here that we missed. All right? We didn't really fill in that theory by which discussion would foster individual learning outcomes. And it was refreshing to see IES ask us for more theory. And so we really went to town on that theory, a la Vygotsky and social constructivism, and it was good fun. So that black box we probably should have had in there. We should have somehow represented that better. But in the end, we got the grant, so I guess nothing else matters. And just to close, I did some homework last night on logic models, and a Google search turned up this talk by Mark Lipsey. Some of you may know Mark Lipsey, very well-known statistician and methodologist who works a lot with IES. And here's a talk, a workshop he gave for IES on evaluating state and district level interventions. And in this PowerPoint, we had a logic model. And I thought, oh, maybe to really know what a logic model is, I should have looked at this. And this is his logic model for, there we go, for, I guess, a pre-K literacy intervention, right there, with his target population of 4-year-olds. And he has set approximate outcomes, attitudes, literacy skills, school behavior, and distal outcomes, increased school readiness, greater learning gains, and K. So I actually thought, that's not much more fancy than what I had, so maybe I was okay. But then he does get more specific and start labeling the various variables he was attaching to his model. So maybe that's a good thing to do. And I think the models we saw from Jerry and Emily were more fully fleshed out like that. One of the problems in doing a logic model of a development grant through IES is, by definition of development, you're going through a iterative process of developing your model, and it's changing over time. So to pre-specify a logic model seems kind of weird. And so, you know, for instance, in the grant that we're working on now, on the professional development project, we're changing as we go. For instance, these modules are no longer there. We just thought that was a stupid idea. And so, second year into the project, there are no more modules. So, being iterative and developmental, but having a logic model doesn't quite fit well. It fits better for program evaluation. You think you know what you're doing.